Nike ahead of earnings, yes. So you just mentioned that this is a year driven by headlines. Of course, tensions with China have not obviously been great news for the retailer, but they don't seem to care. I mean, Nike's up 33% year to date. They're actually the 7th best performer in the Dow. So this is a stock that's up just in the last month alone 5%. So they really don't care. I mean, if you're in the athletic retailer space, you're poised to have a pretty good year and headed pretty strong into the new year. So Andy, do you think this growth can continue for Nike going into the new year?
Yeah, I do. I think what we're seeing with our data is pretty much all systems go at Nike. When we look at LikeFolio purchase intent, which covers everything from the Jordan brand, which is doing extremely well, to Nike, to their sportswear lines, this is people talking about buying those products. And what I have highlighted here in these squares is the last 3 years of this current quarter that they're about to report and the upcoming quarter that they're currently in. And you can see this year's growth is pretty phenomenal. It's already reflected in the stock price, I think, for the most part, but Nike definitely doing a really good job. Looks very strong going into this report. The stock right at $100. We think Nike's going to put up a really nice report. LikeFolio data focuses on English-speaking consumers, so we aren't capturing what's going on in China or some parts of Latin America, but with over 40% of the revenue coming from North America and that being a leading driver worldwide, we think Nike, in terms of consumer demand, is doing a very, very good job of delivering.
Andy, what do you put percentage change on any of those readings that you get from year to year to year? Because we all see that they're stronger, but what would you call the percentage increase in those numbers?
Yeah, it's about a 20% year over year increase, somewhere around there, which is really strong for such a large company and such an established company. It's a growth rate that we have not seen in Nike for several years, or any really retailer or athleisure outside of Lululemon, which isn't as large. So for a company this size, it's a very, very positive move.
Yeah, and of course we see with these retailers, they do certainly move on earnings. We saw Lulu get absolutely killed.
Right, on good earnings.
Yes, on good earnings, to our dismay. We were very disappointed in that, Kevin. So our first tweet is from the stock guy, who says, despite my exit yesterday, Nike continues to push higher. Earnings are tonight, and regardless whether they beat or not, change in tariffs and high consumer spending has people jumping on board leading up. Micron beats and could move more, but also move the entire sector today. So I thought this was really interesting because when we talk about Nike, it's hard to not compare them to, of course, the Lulu and the Under Armour and even Dick's, where they carry all these products. And Nike, actually, if you look at the whole kind of group, is doing kind of in the middle of the range, even though they are so much bigger than the other companies. But it's interesting because could they move at all like Lulu did on good earnings, like you mentioned? We
were just talking about in the previous segment how Dick's Sporting Goods has a market maker move because their implied volatility is elevated because of Nike.
Right.
And that's not really shocking, because if you walk into a Dick's, it's Under Armour and Nike everywhere in that store. So not really surprising that they would be highly correlated and related in a way. So yeah, I think Nike's earnings could help or hurt Under Armour, Foot Locker. I mean, there's a big list of people that can, much like Apple has smaller companies. I mean, there's a lot of people that will be looking at Nike's earnings.
Andy, is it crazy to think that Nike's been paying attention to the success that Lululemon has been having? Obviously, they're putting a lot of efforts into their direct-to-consumer and their e-commerce business, which is boosting their margins. And of course, kind of the trends in terms of athleisure wear being more and more popular now. I mean, that's basically Lululemon's playbook right there, and you're seeing that kind of being the reasons for success in Nike. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I really think you hit the nail on the head there with direct-to-consumer. It's becoming a very, very large part of their business. I think that this quarter, it will probably go over 1/3 of their total business for the first time ever. And that, you talked about Dick's, I would talk about Foot Locker as a more pure play on that. It's really troublesome for those companies because the more people decide to buy directly from Nike, the less they need the experience at Foot Locker or at a Dick's. And so those companies, I think, they may play off of Nike, but they're going to be actually, it could go the other way. A good quarter from Nike is not necessarily a good thing for Dick's or for Foot Locker if that direct-to-consumer line is charging up too much. And, we think that it will based on our data.
Yeah, there's that one story that could actually help Nike and hurt Dick's Sporting Goods is Nike saying our direct-to-consumer is exploding, right? I mean, or what about the other announcement, them moving away from Amazon? What if they come out and say, oh, by the way, we've moved from Amazon and we're putting our shoes in Targets? Or one of these other big box retailers instead of Amazon, right? Because, I mean, there's so many things. The next pivot that Nike makes could be massive in terms of how it affects all the other retailers.
Absolutely, and this is a name, of course, people love on Twitter. I mean, just the stock talk on this name is so huge. It's wild, actually. So our next tweet says, Nike, the athletic gear giant, posts results for fiscal second quarter after the close Thursday. Wall Street sees EPS rising 10% to 57 cents as revenue pops 8 to 10 billion. So, of course, this is the predictions for their earnings that will come. We mentioned they'll move. But, Andy, I'm curious because we mentioned all the different places that can carry Nike. But, I mean, Nike itself has to have pretty strong consumer happiness. I mean, this is a name that has such brand loyalty.
Yeah, it does. I will throw a little bit of a yellow flag out there. For some reason, and we haven't dove into this too much yet, but for some reason, over the last 3 to 5 weeks, we have seen a decently sharp decline in consumer happiness in this really key window of Black Friday through Christmas. And so I'm not sure if that's based on some sort of direct-to-consumer shipping problems or, stock problems or things like that. But it is there, and it is a little bit concerning. But in terms of our data from a consumer demand standpoint, Nike is absolutely firing on all cylinders.
I guess you know what I'm going to ask next here, Andy. Has the stock gone too far? Is this divergence one where maybe the stock's valuation is concerning, or do you like this going into earnings?
Well, actually, neither one. At $100, I actually think it's really fairly priced. I'm kind of staying away from this one just because what we're seeing is really strong consumer demand growth. Obviously, what you're seeing in the stock is really strong growth. This is one of those, unfortunate situations where I get to come on here and say Wall Street probably has it right. If Nike gets beaten down after this report, after a good report like Lulu did, I think that's probably the best opportunity for something to look at that would be compelling.